Allen versus Curtis. So this fight is coming up on Saturday. This is the rematch between Brendan Allen and Chris Curtis. This fight was originally supposed to be Brendan Allen versus Marvin Vettori, but Marvin Vettori unfortunately had to withdraw. So we get this rematch, which was just felt very random, but I like it. One important thing about Chris Curtis, gosh, I feel like this is Manon Fior versus Aaron Blanchfield 2.0, because I'm about to read this statistic and I'm about to say the exact same thing I said in that matchup, although I do think this is going to be a lot different of a fight. But Chris Curtis has 92% takedown defense. Another important thing to know about Chris Curtis is he has a lot of power in his hands, and if he touches you, you know, you might go down. Brendan Allen, and he experienced that in the first fight, and yeah, he went down and it was bad. I do think that Brendan Allen has improved a lot since then. I think that Allen needs to be really careful getting countered though, because Chris Curtis is an excellent counter striker and he has a ton of power. And that's kind of what Chris Curtis does. He kind of forces you to fight his fight, to make it a little ugly. And in doing that, he opens you up for counters because now you're playing his game. And if Brendan Allen does that, I do think that there's a huge possibility that he is going to get knocked out or TKO'd in this fight. Chris Curtis, while he does have high takedown defense, it is hard to judge that, because if you look at some of his recent fights, like if you look at the fight with Imavov took him down multiple times. An interesting thing about this fight in both of these guys is they both have 5-round experience. So this is going to be a 5-round fight because it's a main event. But they both have 5-round experience before the UFC. And you'll see this a lot of times with an LFA vet. Like Brendan Allen fought for LFA for quite a bit before he entered the UFC. And when he was in LFA, he had multiple 5-round fights. And you'll see that a lot because they do the title fights in LFA and they have those 5-rounders. So he already has 5-round experience. So that's awesome for Brendan Allen. I think that's huge. I think one thing that he could try to do would be to back Curtis up to the fence. I think if Brendan Allen can be the one pressuring, I think while that will kind of open him up to counters, I do think that's a better strategy because it could potentially set up the grappling, which that's going to be the hard part. How do I get Chris Curtis to the ground? What Imavov did, he had him kind of against the fence, and it was kind of weird the way that he took him down, but it worked really, really well. I think that if Brendan takes a similar approach like he did with Silva too, that could work potentially, because he could try to back Chris Curtis up to the fence. And if he can hurt him on the feet, then he could finish the fight right there like he did with Silva. I just think that it's a lot harder to hurt Chris Curtis than it is a lot of other fighters. If Brendan Allen wants to win this fight, I think he has to get it to the ground. I don't think there's an option. I don't think you're going to win this fight on the feet with Chris Curtis, especially with it being a 5-round fight. That, like, Chris Curtis is going to outbox you. If you stand with Chris Curtis for 5 rounds, you're going to get outboxed, you're going to lose the fight, or you're going to get knocked out. So I don't think that Brendan Allen can stand with Chris Curtis in this situation, unless it's a similar situation like the Bruno Silva fight, like I was talking about, when he had him against the fence, he got him hurt, and then he finished the fight right there. Yeah, he's going to have to get this fight to the ground somehow. I just don't know how he's going to do it. I do think his grappling has improved a lot, though. I think that Allen is one of the best grapplers at middleweight right now. I just think that it's going to be hard for him to take Chris Curtis down. And Chris Curtis has only been submitted one time in his entire MMA career, and I think he's got like 40-something fights. He's only been submitted one time. He does kind of have a short neck, too. So I actually think the best route for Brendan Allen would probably be ground and pound, you know, depending on if he gets his back, if he gets on top, if he's able to even take him down. I mean, what if he isn't able to take Chris Curtis down? What is he going to do? He's just going to have to get lucky on the feet, I think. I don't know. I just think that this fight favors Chris Curtis, actually. And I mean, he won the first fight, so it's not really crazy to say that. It's just because I think this is a much harder matchup for Brendan Allen than Vettori was. Marvin Vettori is excellent on the ground. So I think that was a tough fight in that sense, but I think that Brendan had more opportunities there. I think there were more opportunities for Brendan Allen to win in that fight than there are against Chris Curtis. just because he does have such good takedown defense. He's got power in his hands. He's got really good boxing. I think that this is a tougher matchup, and especially on short notice. You know, Brennan's been preparing for a completely different opponent. So I actually do like Chris Curtis's chances in this fight. I really do. So it's going to be interesting what happens. But I am leaning toward Chris Curtis, to be honest. And in my prediction for Vettori versus Allen, I was picking Brendan Allen. And now I'm kind of like, ooh, I don't know. Marvin Vettori's a lot more hittable than Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis has way better defense. He actually has really good defense. So we'll see.